Welcome back to Table Talk, Basha's #1 sports podcast. Jaden Rick, and today our special guest is Basha football assistant coach, Coach Kelly. Unfortunately, today we're without Gavin Wilson. He's preoccupied, for a lack of better words. And our goal today is to kind of break down coaching in a modern world, right? What it's like to coach football and sports in general in this new age of things like social media, the transfer portal, NIL, all of that. And then I really want to get into where we think this is going to go and how the future of these sports end up. So as I mentioned, we're here with assistant coach, Coach Kelly. And Coach, I know that you're well known around campus. You're very well respected on the team. But for anybody who's not familiar with you, can you tell us how you got into football?
Kind of a little weird story. I always wanted to be a teacher, social studies teacher, I think going back to my junior year in high school. And I started working with the athletic department at the University of Arizona when my playing days were over. And so I came back up here, enrolled at ASU to take some post-grad classes and work on my teaching cert and that kind of thing. And a buddy of mine who I'd played high school football with, he had just moved on to coaching at Phoenix College, and he had been at our high school. And we were talking, and he said, "You should just go coach. You should go volunteer. They're looking for coaches." And so I kind of ran down to the school that afternoon and threw my hat in the ring and filled that application. My high school coach, my position coach, had become the athletic director at that point. And so he took my name down, and about 3 weeks later, I got a call. They had a 120 freshman class at Corona. Within, ironically, Coach McDonald, who I work for now, was a freshman in that class. And so, yeah, it was kind of the world comes around full circle, but started doing that, loved it. A couple of the younger coaches were there, just really appreciated the extra help. We had 4 guys coaching 120 kids, freshmen,
Tough crowd.
Yeah, it's, they're squirrely. They're excited about high school football, and it just kind of rolled into the head freshman coach was the head varsity wrestling coach. He was also the head boys and girls track coach. And so he just, at the end of football season, "Hey, would you come help me out with wrestling?" And I'd wrestle for a couple of years for him in high school. And so I did that, and he said, "Why don't you come out for track?" And I became a 3-sport coach for 5 years. And then just kind of melted down to football for a year. And then another guy who I'd worked with football-wise had asked me to come help him coach track. And then that has turned into a 25-year career in track, 32 years in football. So
You started out big freshman class, as you mentioned,
Yeah.
and you stuck with high school, right? You didn't go on to be, an NFL coach. And I find that interesting sometimes. I think sometimes people think success is going to that level, but I appreciate when people can find, success in the high school level. So was that ever an aspiration of yours to go on?
It was. I think I think about it in the back of my mind. I've had a couple opportunities. Once at the junior college level, a couple times at the Division III level when I was younger. I was always happy. I didn't really ever have to, go chase those titles or positions. If I've worked with good people and good kids, and we had such good kids for so many years there at that school that I was at, that you love the relationship, you love the kids, and it was just always hard to leave, And back in those days, I was just thinking about this the other day, Division I coaches, they were making $60,000, $85,000 a year, as assistant coaches, back in the early mid-'90s, and it's changed dramatically what their contracts are today, but it was no different. It wasn't chasing money. It was kind of chasing that college thing, and a lot of it was who you knew, and to get those opportunities I was quite happy. I kind of had landed my feet where I thought I would want to be for the rest of my life, and it was a good gig.
What's it like working with that high school setting compared to the pros, where you only have 4 years, and half that time they're freshmen and sophomores,
Yeah.
really young crowd?
I think it's more team cultural. It's more program oriented at the high school level. People don't think of it that way, but you bring in kids and you develop them, and they're in and they're out, and you get to see them go on to bigger, better things. Your team changes, but it's still kind of the same core group that goes through. I've always been lucky enough to have an impact or interaction with the lower level kids to the time they walk out the door. So that's kind of special. I know, like, for example, the NFL, they talk about small windows. You get 1 year, and then there's so much turnover naturally with free agency, with contracts, with trade, not so much trades anymore, but that kind of thing. College is the same kind of way. College is that family culture. You go to a program, you stayed in that program, they developed you into what they wanted. Only rarely did you have a case where somebody left. Now it's totally different. Now it's 2 years ago, a couple of us would talk about it. It's like it's going to become free agency on steroids without a salary cap in college, and you see that. We've seen that with a couple of our kids who, 15, 20 offers at a high school, and they went into the portal and kind of struggled to find those niches. A lot of college teams are just taking guys with experience, and they kind of plug and play.
Obviously, you don't think that's the right direction for the sport?
I think it's going to cause some problems. You see a lot of frustration by coaches. I had the privilege to be able to talk to a lot of guys the last few days, last week, and they're pulling their hair out. You'll see the massive turnover. I was just reading something earlier today at lunch that showed the longevity. Football Scoop does a thing with their coaches' longevity. And when you look, like, of the Division I coaches in college, out of the 130 schools, almost 90 of them in the last 2 years have had head coaching turnovers. You're seeing people, get out. Nick Saban, why does he get out? Chip Kelly, he I would just go be a coordinator somewhere, and that kind of thing. I think you're seeing a lot of that. What's happening with the NIL money, the paying of players, you have to recruit your own kids now. There's no time off for college coaches. NFL coaches, they get done with the season, and they get 2 months, and they get vacation, and they can go family vacation. College coaches, they just got locked out of their stuff today for a month. It's no contact, but now they're already starting off-season workouts with very limited contact with their kids, but they're starting to work their recruiting boards. They may get a week or two off here, but then they're back at it as soon as March hits with spring ball, and now they're going to have to deal with the portal again in May. Kids that may not be happy with their playing time are going to start, I want to leave. And the other thing that some of them were expressing was they got a kid who comes in and starts negotiating. We've heard stories of a third-string running back coming in and going, I need $100,000. Yep. And if you don't pay me $100,000, I'm going to go down the street to this other school. Another coach was talking about a couple wide receivers that they were, pretty good wide receivers, had some great opportunities. And coaches came in and gave $690,000 to go play at their school. And, they just lost these kids without, necessarily doing that. And it's become a bidding war. Another big problem is agents at the college level now. There's zero restrictions on that. Those guys are collecting 25% of a kid. So if a kid gets $200,000 to go from school A to school B, these agent guys are coming in and saying, well, this school's going to give him $250,000. What are you going to get him? He really wants to stay. Okay, well, let's get it up to $275,000, $265,000, and then somebody else will come in. Kids are calling, agents are calling and saying, what am I going to get? What are we going to get? How much are we going to get? And a kid gets $200,000, an agent's taking $50,000 of that right off the top. It's no longer national letters of intent. Yep. They're signing contracts. And I think until they get kind of tightened down, I think you're going to see, as people have used the word Wild West, it's going to be a little bit of the Wild West for a while. And probably about 2 or 3 years from now, they're going to crank it down a little bit. It's going to have to tighten up, or it's going to implode, or you're going to have kind of a semi-pro 20 teams on top, and then everybody else, because these are the teams that can afford it. You look at what Ohio State spent, over $260 million on their football program last year. They brought in $230 million. They're $32 million in the hole. And you're going to get some universities go, well, is a national championship worth
That much money?
that much money? And that's an overall, from recruiting to budgets to, little lanyards that they give out to everybody to, hotels and plane flights, and that's all incorporated. But, I know their NIL money was $20 million. So you look at a roster of 100 kids, split $20 million up. It's
Decent chunk of money.
yeah.
Do you see things like that kind of seeping their way into high school eventually? I know there's already, not to the degree that it is in college, but there is some regulations and some recruitment rules here,
Yeah.
at least in Arizona. I know some of our district rivals have had issues with the AIA about some of their recruitment things, say Hamilton and other kind of schools like that. So is it already kind of here, or is it still on the way?
It's here. I think it's not as blatant and out front as people have any idea of. I think there's some kids that I know in Arizona high school that are getting NIL. And it's legal. The AIA has said, we're going to remove you if you use your school logos. I can't even do an NIL as a coach with a Basha logo on. But if they do, there's some severe penalties. There's been some kids caught up in not knowing exactly, and so they're trying to bring that back under. We had that issue with a school on the other side of town last year. But I think you're going to start to see it. How far can it go before a lawsuit? Because that's what always happens. That's what always changes it. That's what got the eligibility thing. That's what got this junior college thing this year. That's what got NIL. The old UCLA basketball players that said, you're using my name, image, and likeness in a video game. I should be getting that. You're selling my jersey. And it just takes a court, and it takes people to go to court and say, yeah, that's fair. That's constitutional. That's the American way. And that's what's opened the door to this being able to transfer anytime and go to that with college. And at what point do you, with due process and, your constitutional rights, say, I can't go out and earn money? I'm a 16-year-old kid. I'm 17, 18-year-old kid. How can you deny me that? There's probably a little bit more restrictions, like some of the freedoms that you give up when you come to high school, about your backpacks and your searching and what you can do and that kind of thing. But I think historically the way things have gone to court and the way judges and people have ruled, it's going to be hard to stop it. You have schools out of state that regard NIL. We were scared in Arizona for a while that when California starts kicking this NIL thing in, how many Arizona kids are going to leave their last senior year to go get a paycheck? Where a high school kid can make more money than in 2 years of playing high school football than he's going to make his first 5 years professionally, which goes to another issue that a coach was talking to me about last week. If I'm that kid making $690,000 a year for 4 years of college, and then my career is over in college, now I got to go get a job. Average $80,000, $90,000 a year job, even $125,000. I played a game. I worked out. I lifted. I went out and had fun with my friends. I played a team sport, and I was making $690,000 a year. Now I'm making $80,000, and I go at 7 in the morning, and I come home at 6 at night, and I'm behind a desk. How are we preparing kids for that? I know other states, to go back to the high school thing a little bit, other states, Utah almost has no restrictions. I mean, they're giving people jobs, they're giving people houses, You know, they're putting them up in houses so that they can get kids to their schools. It's become that competitive. Will we see a day where schools are making X amount of cash like colleges are? If that starts happening, you're going to see that, I think, to some level where you have that. AIA's got a really good kind of grasp on it now to keep it amateur status, that kind of thing. But the fear is if it changes, you know, how many old school guys like us stick around?
I mean, it's tough, right?
Yeah.
So, you know, you've been around the block, so you've dealt with everything before social media and NIL, right? So
Yeah.
now, to deal with that, how has that switch been for you? I know, as we just said, high school is nowhere near as bad, but have you had to like change your mentorship style? Have you had to talk to kids about, you know, like, let me put it like this: have you felt like the shift in players has focused from the game into the business over the last 20 years?
I would say not into the business. I would say more the hype, you know, the clicks, the likes, the social media. I'm not a huge, big lover of Twitter, you know, X. But in my job, you have to do it.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we have to promote the school. We have to promote our kids. We want to do that. It's big. You know, I remember, you know, that never became an issue, but kids count how many offers they're getting. And I think that's going to change a little bit with the NIL part of this. After what I saw this year, you know, there's going to be I need to address, I think, my kids into realistic expectations. That's going to change the recruiting thing. If you want to go to certain schools, you better look at how many portal guys they're taking. You know, there are certain schools, their last 4 running backs have all been portal guys. If you're a running back, do you want to go to that school? Because your freshman, sophomore year, you're thinking, okay, I'm working, I'm going to go in. Oh, wait, there's a 2,000-yard runner at this other school. They're going to give him $500,000 to come here. They've been developing me. Do I have a shot? You know, do you have a better, what's more important? Playing, being on that team. You know, their kids are dealing with that. We've had a couple former players of ours that, you know, maybe they get on the field a lot more junior, senior year than they're getting, but the level of frustration of not being developed or kids being brought in front of them has caused, you know, I need to take a step back. I maybe need to go to a different level to play. I know I've had the conversation the last 2 weeks watching this with recruiting and with watching kids in portal. You know, a kid who's a 3-star, for example, somebody's ranked there. Maybe they need to really think about Division II FCS and getting on the field a lot, because when they're on the field, their film shows, and that's what a Division I guy is going to take after 2 or 3 years. You know, if you're really wanting to play at the Big Ten school, you know, if they're all over you, yeah. If you're kind of that 5-star, 4-star kid, probably got a really good shot. If you're a 3-star kid and you're kind of that tweener that you're looking at, okay, I'll play it as a sophomore, junior, senior, maybe get on the field a little bit, but that's kind of, if you're in love with the culture, you're in love with the school, wonderful. You need to look at, am I happy being here if I don't ever play? And then if not, maybe I need to think about, like, maybe I need to go to a big-time Division II school, start for 3 years, and then I'm going to get a year where I'm going to get a huge payout, and a Southeast Conference school is going to take me for a year.
So for the athletes that you've had, are most of them the 5 stars, the 4 stars? Are they dead set on going to the league, or do they manage their expectations a little bit, at least from what you've seen?
I've seen it all. I've seen it's kind of weird. I've had the privilege to coach a guy who played 8 years in the league. He was a baseball guy first. You know, it was okay. Well, I guess I've got a college scholarship in football, not baseball. I'm going to get my education. Well, 2 years of playing, getting in as a redshirt freshman, he played. He started as a sophomore, and the love of the game took him, and he played 8 years. And after 8 years, he kind of looked at it and said, my body's beat up every morning. I'm tired of being hurt. I'm going to walk away. I've had another kid who was, big time recruit, who that's all he wanted to do was the league. I've had some kids that wanted to be in the league that injuries tallied them and have right before they've made it, or they've gotten at least a tryout with the NFL team, but the injury kept them from being able to be as good as they could have been. I've seen a couple players that was their goal. And when they got to college, the piranhas in the mix have kind of just discouraged them from, I just want to play. I don't have a goal to get to that league anymore to do that. And I think there's everybody's got to look at that. It's exciting. Everybody wants to play at the highest level. The dream of kids is to obviously play at the highest level for a lot of them, especially when they're putting in the work that they have to put in today. Is it one of those things where it changes? People change. People grow. We've had a lot of kids, throughout the years that have gone and said, okay, I'm done. I've done football so much, or I've done baseball, basketball. I'm happy. I'm ready to be done. And we've had the last 3 years here, I could think of probably 6 or 7 kids that had the opportunity to go on and play and have a major impact somewhere. And they've just said, I'm good. And when you can walk away, that's probably the best thing. Because for so many of us who have done this, our time was cut shorter than we wanted it to. Somebody's always going to tell you, you can't play anymore. You're just done. You can't play anymore. And so, I try to tell kids that if you want to play, there's a place for you. But at some point, you do hear that, it doesn't matter if you go to an NAIA school or a Division I school. At some point, it ends. You can go out and play rec league all you want, but,
the competitive side eventually
Sure.
does end. And
Sure.
I think what's interesting with that is kind of the way college is approaching it now. We just had JUCO rules change, right? You can now play 4 years of JUCO, then go in and play more in college. Yeah. And JUCO's already, at least here in Arizona, pretty much gone. I mean, what's happened with that is it's really limited. I think I can't even think of more than a handful of JUCO football programs still around. Do you see that?
They're hard. There's California has its league. There's a couple obscure ones. The rest of Oregon, Washington, Kansas. The Kansas league is still probably the best. Right through the Midwest there in Kansas, Butler, Hutchinson, Independence and Garden City. Those are there, but that's hurt so many, especially now that you can. The transfer portal thing would probably help Arizona JUCO kids more than anything else. And some of that they've talked about. This is a 1 year only thing. The NCAA is kind of backing off that. You can go play JUCO and it's not going to count. That's a one-time lawsuit thing that they're April 8th, I think, is when they're going to readdress it again. But the kid now, I look at some of these schools and the coaches that I know in college, and we've had some great players that went into the portal, and they were sitting because they were working, they were 2s or 3s on the depth chart, and they passed on them when they didn't pass on them in high school. They offered them the world at high school, and so then to take other guys because their jobs are on the line now too. A few years ago we had a bunch of coaches fired at 7 and 5. They got 30-year mortgages with a 1-year contract. Couple-year contracts now are kind of expanding, but you don't win, you're out. And I can either take a kid that I'm not sure of or take a kid that I have tons of film on who's played. They're taking the kid who's played because they just want to plug and play. And I think that's where the JUCO, especially in Arizona, is hurting. They've got to find a way to do this with some credibility. And I don't think there's really an organization that can kind of step in. Some coaches tried to do some things in the past in Arizona. It would be really wonderful if they took something like Intel or one of these big corporations that thrive in Arizona and kind of turned it into like, we're going to fund this for a while to get it, because it needs to roll again. Even if you put 4 schools together and they had some limited travel, I think you'd see more Arizona kids come out of just go straight to the JUCO play and then be able to bounce to a bigger school.
Pros and cons to this transferring would be great with something like JUCO, help especially Arizona players. Then at the bigger Big Ten schools, right, then it's kind of like, all right, we've got so many kids transferring.
Yeah.
That's where it starts to get messy. Another side of that modern coaching world, though, that I want to talk about with you is social media. You brought up how you don't like Twitter. I don't know many people who do, so you're not alone in that. But do you feel like, because I've noticed this, that there's some of the highlight culture, and I feel like it's more present in sports like basketball than football, but it's still there. Do you feel like just I guess there's a lot of media on high school sports that there really wasn't there before. You guys had an incredible opportunity to have a documentary full season 2 seasons ago. You've got us at every game recording for you guys, and then you have countless other photographers. So do you think that this mixture of social media into the game has kind of changed some of the athletes' mentalities or attitudes?
Yeah, I think to some level it has. I don't think you can umbrella it as in all, because some aren't. There's a lot of them that don't even have it. I think, it's what comes from the home a little bit. Some kids, they need that feeding. They need to do that, and they need to get that, that hype for themselves. And I think there's a place for it too, where you want to promote yourself. Social media is a general problem in all, from, when they started with, from Facebook to whatever, all the things we've dealt with all of that. But I think if it's regulated, if it's controlled, I think there's some more level-headedness now that I see that I did 3-4 years ago. Kids want to please adults, and that's one of the biggest things in coaching. They want to do good. They don't want to disappoint. And I think that's a way that they can express that they're doing good, they're representing their parents, their family, their team. How do you wrap that into something positive and productive versus not? You mentioned that AZ Central thing. That thing, those guys should have won an Academy Award for that. Yeah. That was one of the most impressive things I've seen when they put it all together for that night at the theater. That was incredible. Cheryl and Patrick Breen and those guys that I had family and friends throughout the country who watched that, and they're like, I've never seen anything like that before. And that was really important. And they did a very good job of doing that. The social media, that was fed out there on Twitter and hyped. And I think it just brought great recognition to high school sports, to good people, to good culture, to good kids, to good adults, to the things we're doing here at Basha that encompass the good and don't the bad. There's enough on Twitter of the garbage that goes on.
And you mentioned the households being part of that reason. I'm going to be blunt when I say this. I do think parents are a big issue when it comes to managing athletes' attitudes. I think I see it. I saw it especially when I played youth sports, and I mean, I'm talking like rec basketball over the summer, and there's parents who will be at games and they can't keep their cool at a 10-year-old's basketball game, and it's like, all right, we're setting our expectations, we're really holding our child accountable for these things that, I mean, it's a little much, and I think it starts with the parents, and that can develop now with social media, where one of the parents encourages that, or they really are a little too extra about their child, and now you have them getting kind of an ego going into later in high school and into college. Is that
Yeah.
something that you've seen? I know Basha is, from what I've seen, is one of the best programs. And I'm not just saying
Yeah.
that because you're here. But some of the types of coaches and different ways programs run is a little bit, not a little bit, a lot more tolerating of that culture.
Oh yeah, I think we do a good job. I think the administration, Coach McDonald, he has a good thumb on it. You know that, and the district does too. I know the district does a great job of following, and the administration does. Like, hey, if we have an issue with this, they're on it. We've had things that I've heard about that some kids have put out there, and the program has been on top of it. But kids don't change. I could pull you a high school yearbook from 1925, and the kids are writing the same thing in the yearbook that they're writing today. They don't change. The same behaviors, the same things go on. Just social media is a different outlet for it. It's made things more public, more accessible. Parents have been parents. You have great parents. You have the spectrum of parents and how involved they are in their kids. And so, you want to do what you can, and that's what gives us the opportunity to be at the high school. You don't want to be a parent for a kid in high school as a coach, but you want to help them, steer them in the right direction to make good decisions that time you're with them. In the time I've done this, over time, they used to say, go look at somebody's 5 closest friends, and that's who they're going to become. Your parents used to be your biggest influence when I was a kid growing up. And then somewhere towards the end of my childhood and stuff, television became the biggest influence on us, when so much television has done that. And maybe it's a good thing now TV isn't. But now it's friendships, and now they say social media has a bigger impact on kids than anybody else. So as we change, as we move, how do you get that time? And we have a great culture and environment here at the high school where you see so many parents involved. I think there's like 4 or 5 kids that I know that their parents control their social media. Or I've had a couple kids that, like, I've sent social media a clip of a drill that we do, and I've shared it with them to show them, look, like, Alabama's doing this drill. And I'm like, did you see it? And they're like, I don't have Twitter. And I'm like, well, your parents are great. Your parents are great.
Yeah.
Good for you. And someday I won't coach anymore, and I can delete that app.
Not a fan of social media.
I just think it can eat you alive. It can bring out the best, and it can also bring out the worst. I know I've been at times where I'm on social media, and I want to write something back to somebody, and
You got to really
hold you're like, that's not really a good thing, and when you think about it, you're like, is that really the person I want to be when I write that back? They say all the time, when you're mad at somebody, you want to text them back or send an email back to somebody that you're not happy with, write it, hold it for 24 hours. And I bet 24 hours later, when you're looking at it, you're like, no, delete. I've done that. I've started texting somebody back something, and I'm like, you hold that arrow back as long as you can, try to get it all deleted and erased as fast as you can. But are there good things? Do we see great things about, humanity on social media and all that? And that's what I enjoy, seeing those things where you have a guy who played football or rugby at Cal, and he becomes paralyzed, and his story year after year about, a year ago he got up for the first time, and then another year later he's up there. I love following that kind of stuff. You like seeing the humanitarian, the human thing. Those are great that we've exposed ourselves to. But then, then on your feed you get just the worst of the worst.
And you as an educator, being around high school kids all day, and I know you teach world history, so that's the younger, that's the freshmen.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, do you hear or see any of the types of things that they see on social media? Because I know we talked sports, but social media in general, especially in high school, it can get pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, I don't know if it's Basha. I don't know if it's we're starting to learn, you know. I would say 10 years ago when it was crazy. The things that you saw and the things you heard and the kids talking and the cameras out every 5 minutes filming this stuff and posting it and that kind of thing. But I don't hear. Maybe it is because I see so many freshmen and, maybe it's because they put their phones in their little cubbies. But I don't see what I saw 5 or 6 years ago that really just got you concerned. We saw so many societal problems, the bullying, the cyberbullying. It goes on. Mm-hmm. I don't think to the extent. Maybe it does, and maybe I've always been a little naive to that. But I think in some way it's getting better. Maybe some areas are worse than others, but
definitely improved.
Yeah.
I feel like coming out of COVID, I think that really just everything was going here, maybe a little bad, and then boom, very large spike in the type of activity and types of content that was really socially acceptable to teenagers, and the rest of the world kind of looks at that and they're like, all right, like that's way too far. That's just not acceptable. But I think it is better now that we've kind of come out of the pandemic. Kids are getting more adjusted, especially like my generation, right? We were in middle school right when COVID happened. So, I mean, I'm glad that I turned out the way I am, obviously, but a middle school's a hard time to not have that social development for a year and be online. I think we saw an uptick in what people thought they could get away with just because they weren't around real people.
Well, and I think not just that, what we did to people with that, where you isolate. Humans can't be isolated. We're social animals. You have to. We see what happens when you isolate people in general and the behaviors and all the, psychology, sociology stuff that goes on. And I mean, every kid should take a psychology, sociology class in high school if they can, just to see that growth in human behavior. I was lucky enough to teach it for 18 years. And it just enlightens you about, identifying the need for human contact and appreciation and when people are lonely and when people don't have those things. And I think when they've been cut off, kids that cut off at such age, where else do you go? Where do you go for social interaction? The TV is a one-way social interaction. I'm not getting on the phone and talking on the radio, and phones have been important, but the days of getting on a phone and talking to somebody for an hour don't happen anymore. So I can text so much, or I can get on and start doing this, and then I become obsessed with this, and it's addicting. And you've known, and you've heard the studies before of those guys in Silicon Valley. They've admitted it in congressional hearings. Yeah. It's addicting.
Purposely.
Yes. And so they don't even send their kids to schools that allow those things. So what does that tell you? And exactly. So I have to put it on my desk because I'll stand in front of the classroom and I'll naturally just want to do. I do it at night. When everything's slow, I can have 5 things going on and you're doing this, and it's the human social and I think that's where that part that you said that it got crazy because you just get wrapped up in that. Go read Kafka's Metamorphosis. That kind of talks about it.
So kind of tying this all together now, the future of coaching, we've seen a change. We've seen a spike in things like social media, but now it's kind of going downhill. Do you see the future of coaching being more positive or more negative? Is it something where you see less coaches getting involved because of the culture?
I'm worried about the long-term coaches. I'm worried about the coaches that are in it for the kids. I'm worried about the coaches who I think you're going to have a hard time finding 30-year coaches anymore. The coaches that can kind of give along multiple sport coaches, it becomes hard. You see so many guys getting in and out so often. You know, just at the high school level alone, head coaching jobs are hard to, 50 coaches the last 2 years in football, in Arizona high school football. There's 305 schools, and we've turned 50 some odd coaches over the last 2 years each. There are sports we can't get coaches in. The hardest part is finding people that are there for the right reasons, because it still is about developing kids. It's about having the right goal for kids. Most of these kids don't go pro. There's plenty of kids that we've coached for years, and I remember their parents were adamant, the kids were adamant by the time they were done with high school that they were so mad at the program or the head coach because first round of the playoffs and out or this and that. And then 5-6 years later, you run into them and they're like, my kid had the greatest experience. I was mad at that coach at that time, but I look back at it, my kid, all his best friends are this. He is this way. He's developed this way. I want to make sure that keeps happening, that you're out there for the kid, that we don't have people that are just driven, to put trophies and banners in their pocket and kind of beat their chest and it's about me. It's not about you. It's, we have a small infinite window with these kids and their development, and you want to create an experience that they can look back and say, I'm a better person. I'm a better young man or young woman. I had a great experience by doing XYZ sport at XYZ high school. And I chose to end my athletic career, my extracurricular activity at this point. But those are some of my fondest times. Those are some of my best times. I think those are the kind of things you want to make sure that you get away from, and the chasing rings and it's scary. Coaches get worried that they're going to get fired over wins and losses. I've never really seen a coach that gets fired over wins and losses. They get fired for doing dumb things. They get fired for not treating kids properly, for, losing control, other things that get people in trouble. But if you're always looking out for the best interest of the kid, and now granted, you're going to get some people who are in charge who are like, I'm here to win and that's all we're here to do. And we're going to win in my program and that kind of thing. And it lasts a little while. There's probably some administrators at the high school level who are like that too, and willing to, but those things don't last long, it just doesn't, because you lose the core of the kids who are there to be part of something special and something bigger than themselves. Do I think social media will have an impact and a role? Yes. Do I think the hype of it, the scholarship thing, the push and all that, yes and no, but in the end, it settles itself out. And 32 years later, it's still the same. You still have young kids that want to come in and work hard and please adults, and the good kids last. The good kids and the parents and the involvement, the community involvement, they're the ones you look back on. They're the stories, and you tell those stories over and over, and the kids tell stories when they come back to their reunions. You look at the high school that I went to, that I coached at, and Coach McDonald went to, and some other teachers here on this campus went to. They're having their 50th anniversary in a year or two, and so I had to jump back on Facebook I was told I have to get back on it as part of that. And people reminiscing and recreating all of those adventures. You don't get that anywhere else in high school. You don't get it with your kindergarten class. You're going to get it with 5 or 6 people from college. Your work people are friends for work, but those high school relationships, those high school connections that you make,
That's what makes it worth it.
that's what makes it worth it for the kids more than anything else.
All right. Thank you, Coach.
Absolutely.
I appreciated talking this because I think we mentioned all of the social media stuff, and as you said, it's the same kids. They still want to win. There's hard workers there. Now it's just under a different spectacle. With social media and stuff, maybe it's blown out of proportion how bad people say it has really gotten, when now you just see it way more often, right? When you've got 30 cameras at every game, it's the same kids. Now you're just seeing it. So I appreciate your opinion on that, and I think that as
we had we had one incident, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I blew up, but it was nobody's fault. That's the world we're in. How do we address that beforehand? That's the biggest thing.
Yep.
Right.
Moving forward, figuring out what works best, what's that balance between the media and high school sports, and then actually focusing on the game.
Yeah.
That's all I have today, guys. We appreciate you tuning in to Table Talk as always. Special guest, Coach Kelly here, assistant football coach of the Basha Bears. Make sure you guys follow us on our social medias, ironic as it be. We'll see you guys next time.